Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Calm Within the Storm podcast with me, your host, Sam Lyon. Everything can change, even the world we live in. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the ways in which we can move forward with our lives following a difficult experience, and how we can learn to recognise our achievements and our progress along the way. Today I'm joined by Arthur West. Arthur is an incredibly talented pianist. Hi, Arthur.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well.
Yeah?
Very well.
Thank
The
you
right
for
day to
joining
come
me.
and do this. I'm feeling energised.
Amazing.
So I'm looking forward to it.
First, could you give us a little introduction as to who you are, what your brief experience and relationship with today's topic of moving forward? I mean, that's a very big question, I get that. So kind of, what's been your journey in brief terms so far?
My name's Arthur. I'm a pianist, singer, do work all over the UK, and I'm here today because being an artist can be an up and down experience. I learned that the past few years. I've lived in London, I've done that scene, and that can be very up and down. The biggest thing for me was coming out of a relationship while I was in London with another creative person, and it kind of devastated me, so I had to learn a lot about myself again, how to be an artist, how to be authentic, and how to also remember what I actually like doing, what I like about myself, and then trying to embrace that without treading into narcissism and getting too self-obsessed, which is another thing about being an artist. It's a precarious balance. So I've been walking that line for a while and just trying to figure out, okay, what do I like about me, but how do I care for other people, and how do I be a better person for them? And that's been instrumental in getting me where I am today, which is hopefully in a happier place.
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, especially with artistic jobs, there's a lot of balance involved. You've got the balance of competitiveness versus comparativeness, like you want to kind of be on par with everyone else, but you sort of still want to outdo everyone else, but you don't want to outdo everyone else too much, and yeah, it's a real roller coaster.
That's it. I would describe my last relationship in that way, and my career, which maybe says something about me, or something about us as creatives. There's a madness in there.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
Some kind of craving, for a little bit of crazy life, and I certainly attracted that into my life, and it was amazing. The highs are the best, but the lows are the worst. Yeah. But all of it is a lesson, and I don't regret anything like that. I'm sure as you don't with the gigs and the lifestyle. You take the good and the bad and you run with it. And the highs are amazing when it comes to music and being a performer. I was just telling someone recently, actually, in terms of the job, we get so much feedback. We're quite lucky in that we get so much direct feedback, and most of it is good generally. Yeah. Because most people want to say nice things. Yeah. But it also means you get some people that want to tell you that you're shit. So the summary of my 15 years of learning to play and sing is summarised in one word for some people, and they'll come up to you and want to tell you that. Yeah. And that's something you learn to live with. And that's the low, amongst other things.
Yeah. That's the low that you always come back to as well. I think whenever you have a low drop at any point, you always think about what someone said 5 years ago, what you did yesterday. Like all of the niggling things, it's so hard to forget about those things.
Yeah. It can stick to you, and I think, again, being creative types, well, maybe it happens to all types, but creative types are sensitive souls, and you give a lot out and you take a lot more in, so the negative can hit you, and sometimes you develop thick skin, and that's important, but yeah, overall I'd say that you're taking in a lot more. I don't know, I'm not going to get spiritual on you, but a lot more energy, and you're giving out a lot more.
Yeah, totally. I guess with all of that in mind, in terms of how we progress through life, I guess coming back to the moving forward as a general, it encompasses like a whole range of not just navigating the highs and the lows, but also how we can stabilize our thoughts so that when those highs and lows come, it's not quite as drastic. And I think one of the biggest things moving forward isn't always a clear process. It's not always what we expect it to be, I think, because in our heads we imagine it to be a light switch moment where it's an immediate fix and we kind of go, one day I'll feel better, or I just need to get through this hard bit and then I'll be okay. You know, it's almost like we talk about it like there's a sudden light switch moment, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's not like that. And it can take years before we even realise, oh, hang on a minute, I am in the light side of the tunnel now, you know? Like, I didn't even notice that there'd been a change. So it's like watching a child grow. You can't quite see it happening before your eyes, but they've gone from being a baby to being a fully functioning, emotionally capable human, and you haven't even been able to see that happen straight away in front of you. Like, it's the same thing with mental health, I think. It's
Totally agree with that. I think it's a good way to put it, is that it's almost intangible, but it does happen, and it's a process. Mm-hmm. And like you've experienced over the past years with grief. Mm-hmm. I mean, someone put it to me, I think it was my sister, she said she'd read something on grief and how you grow around it.
Yeah.
You don't just forget it and you build on it. And that is not an instantaneous process. I mean, it might go on for a long, long time, but the process of doing it is, it's very hard to measure your progress. But I think it's important on that note to celebrate your victories, because, you know, I reached a point like that recently, and it was 2 years since I split up with my ex-partner, and it had taken that long to, I wouldn't say fully heal, but to really be suddenly content in who I am again.
Yeah.
And I was quite frustrated by that. Mm-hmm. How did it take 2 years? You know, she could be gallivanting off with someone else or whatever, but all of that aside, I realised that that's just what it took. And some of the circumstances within it led to that, and I had to understand that and respect the mental health things that were going on beforehand, and realise that it took a long time to get there. But I'm going to say as a creative again, but as an obsessive, which is something that I am. I'm very obsessive about things. It crippled me when it came to recovering from a separation, because I obsessed over winning her back. Yeah. I obsessed over what she was doing. I obsessed over what I was doing in comparison. Yeah. And then I obsessed over healing from it.
It's fully understandable. I mean, not even just in relationships, but in grief or job loss or anything like that, because when something has been such a big part of your life for so long, once that thing is taken away from you, you almost have a hole that you don't quite know how to go over it. You don't know how to go around it. You just and so you're kind of just thinking about what's missing, and you're focusing on everything that was in this hole and not everything that, you know, exists around it. Yeah.
That's a good point. It's a hole, and it's a lack. Mm-hmm. And something that I took from it is that I use that lack, and I hope you have too, to push myself forward into life again, and to try and get back that appreciation of things around me, rather than I don't have this and it's missing. And I, you know, for instance, I tried dating way too soon.
Yeah.
So I tried, you know, going out and trying to maybe satisfy my ego, maybe because I was just trying to fill a hole. I remember kind of looking for a new partner at first.
Yeah.
And that, you know, people can see from a mile away if you've got, you know, reservations, or if you're still hung up on someone else. I think women are very good at spotting that.
Yeah.
So I think, you got to give yourself time in that regard.
Yeah.
And that hole, you got to fill it with lots of good things that you know, not just the obvious things, but find out what you actually like doing again. Yeah. And not just like, I like playing the piano, I like kind of like Lego, you know, I like this and that, and I like going to the gym. But it's beyond that. It's what you actually like to spend your time thinking about.
Yeah. I think for me, I almost found once I had this darkness, I kind of got really absorbed by it at first. And then with my dad, for example, like I looked at his life, and I'd always reflect on his life, and I'd be like, I wish I could take every bit of darkness away from his life. Like he died too soon, and I hate the fact that there was any sadness in there or anything that would have ruined whatever life he had. And so then I kind of was like, well, hang on a minute, you're literally drowning in this darkness. What are you doing? This is your life now, you know. That life was lived. This is your life to make the change with, you know. And that for me was a massive wake-up call. massive wake-up call, and I thought, okay, I need to stop being miserable, simply put. And just really tried to push myself out of my comfort zone. And yeah, I think I liked what you said, like just filling that hole with new things and discovering what you like and discovering things about yourself, and suddenly you've almost filled yourself with like contentment out of nowhere, because you haven't been able to watch the process happening, but you realise 2 years down the line, oh, I feel quite whole now because I've got all of these new things around me, or I'm looking at life in a different way and I never used to look at life, and it's more gratifying, it's just more fulfilling.
I totally get you, and I think the gratification comes with the fact that I'd actually rather not live the life I was living. I feel I can enjoy life more now. I am better to my friends, hopefully. Some of them probably think I'm still a dick. But... and hopefully better in a lot of ways. And I do remember the person I was. And yeah, I was just very ignorant of things. So at the time I was like, why do I have to go through this?
Yeah.
Why do I have to enjoy this grief? A bit like you. I was trapped in a thing of almost denial of going, no, this shouldn't have happened. The universe is messed up here. I need to correct this. And really that's not the way. The way is to try and harmonise with things. And again, not too metaphysical. Maybe there's some metaphysical people listening, they would rather see it like a spiritual thing, but I see it just as a detachment from a need. So a detachment from outcome, and by doing that you open yourself up again. But that denial and that thing, because that's what I had caught onto, this life that I had planned with my ex-partner. We romanticised something and we had an idea, so I had to really grieve that just as much as her.
I mean, when you have an idea of how your life is going to pan out, and then your life doesn't pan out that way, you're almost grieving the life that you didn't have, not just the lack of your partner anymore. You're grieving a whole entire life.
That's it. And it was detachment from that. I only really got over that recently. I say over. And that's why, when we were talking about the title of the podcast, moving forward, not moving on. Moving forward, because I think it just suggests something different. Like, moving on is try and repress things or forget about things, and I don't know if that's the healthiest way. So moving forward, just as a phrase, it seems to
you've
seem
grown
to fit
around
better.
something, and it's still a part of you, and it's shaped who you are, but you're still on your journey with that.
It's not going.
It's almost
going
like
away.
I saw a video recently, and I feel like this is really apt, of trees and how the trees' branches come out. But if the trees' branches fall and break off, the trunk of the tree keeps growing wider and wider as the tree goes older. And those little notches where the broken branches were, they become the knots in the tree when you cut the tree in half, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So where you see like the rings of the tree, where you have those little knots, they were broken branches.
I see what you're saying,
And I love that analogy, because it's like the tree has gone, okay, this bit of me broke and that was damaged, but it's still inside me and it's made me into this bigger trunk of tree, and I'm
it's
stronger
more solid
now.
It might look a bit odd at first, and maybe that's the translation of that, is that you have scars and
totally.
Things about you, as we both do, but it's the overall thing. If you come out better. I think there's something about me that does romanticize past things a little bit. So the time machine for me was always like in terms of like what I would have as a power, the time machine was something. But now I don't want that, because I just live with what I have, and I'm quite happy with it. And it was the end of the denial that allowed me to have a better time of it.
I like that. And I'm gonna actually, on that point, I'm going to go into our first audience question. So I asked people, when overcoming a difficult experience, how easy or difficult do you find it to recognise the progress that you're making on your journey? So the options were easy, I'm good at reflecting, 50-50, somewhere in between, or difficult, I struggle to see progress. And I was really surprised actually by these results, because in my head I expected it to be quite a top-heavy answer towards something, but actually it was very evenly spread.
Okay.
Very evenly. So easy, I'm good at reflecting came in at 20%. 50-50, somewhere in between, was 44%. And difficult, I struggle to see progress was 36%.
Interesting.
I think it's brilliant. And so someone also left a comment as well, and they said, I've struggled in the past, but since I've had therapy, I feel like I've been able to see things for how they are better. And I really like this response because that is exactly what therapy is there for. Therapy is not necessarily a mental tablet you can take that just fixes everything instantly.
Sure.
It's almost just retraining your brain to kind of, okay, disease and illness has come in and I'm going to learn how to fight it off myself. It's almost a vaccine, isn't it, in a way? It's like, if this happens in the future, my body will know how to fight this off again. And I like that this person has gone, okay, well, I used to struggle, but now I have all of the techniques and resources and materials I need to be able to fight through something.
I see what you're saying. It's, I don't say arming yourself.
Yeah,
Probably the wrong term, military term. But yeah, it's preparing yourself to handle these situations and recognise them as feelings.
Yeah.
Not necessarily complete truths. You know, they are feelings and they have meaning and you have to feel them. Now, I can't compare to going on a therapy journey. I don't know if that's what you did. I did speak to several psychologists, but yeah, what they provided me with was tools to just recognise what it is I was dealing with and explanations.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you just need someone to put it how it is and then it just stops your brain going into overdrive.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I still managed to do that.
I think we all do.
But yeah, but maybe I should have gone and got regular. I mean, that's what everyone recommends, and it is hard to actually just go and do.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll probably be better equipped to tell people that than me. I get a bit bad with, I'm a self-learner, so same with the music, I do it myself. I go to the odd lesson, but once I've listened to that, I go, right, I can do this, and then I'll leave. So the therapy thing was like, after speaking to some psychologists, but after 2 years, I'd recently reached out to one of the people I spoke to, and it was really helpful to listen to him again. And listen to his work, because I'd forgotten a lot of the things. I'd over summarised what he did in my writing as being just one area, and really it covered a huge expanse, and it was really helpful to renew those things.
Yeah.
Because these are all cycles, and you might feel something like at some point when you're dealing with a heavy burden, but then 6 months later you're in a totally different frame of mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate to that. Is that you're like in a washing machine.
Yeah.
Just constantly going round and feeling this one day, feeling angry the next day, feeling great some days.
Yeah.
You know, the highs are great. But yes, a therapist can probably tell you how to deal with that.
Yeah, I think there's a beauty in just being able to feel all of those emotions, but in a healthy way. So that you're not anticipating the next drop, you're not getting too ecstatic over the crazy high and things like that. And it sounds really silly to say, don't be too happy. But I think when you have some kind of control and stability over your emotions, you just end up being happier in a whole different way.
That's a really good way to put it, and I have to remember that, because yeah, you can go through these things, and I know what you mean about the positive energy, because I can get intense bursts of positive energy. But the downside of that is that you can be two extremes.
Yeah.
And some people live with that as a condition, and that's a whole nother thing. But I know that after a weekend of playing gigs, playing the piano bar and having a great time, I have to address the fact that I'm going to chase that high when I finish the weekend.
Yeah.
So I might call my mates up and go, oh, let's go out and do this, and then I'm going to do this and do this.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn to dial that back in
Yeah.
and go, no, just take some time, and that's okay if you just want to stay at home that day or you know, do something for yourself. And it's a huge turning point, but the way you put it, yeah, I like that.
It was a really interesting result, actually. Seeing everyone's different types of journey and how they are able to kind of understand their progress. And I like what we were saying earlier, I think it's not always an easy thing to recognise when you're getting better and what you need to get better. And again, on that note, I'm going to move on to the next question. And I think before I touch on this question, I think this somewhat links into previous episodes where the audience participation has been a very open spectrum of people who've had therapy, who've had medication, who haven't yet done anything. Like the people who participate in the polls and who listen to this, we've got a real good spectrum of people involved. But that will lead into this question. What do you think your biggest barrier is that is stopping you from moving forward at the rate you'd like? And the options were myself, for example, my thoughts, anxieties, the resources and support available to me. That could be therapy, it could be medication again. The people around me, or other. Myself came in at 90%.
Right.
The resources and support available came in at 8%. People around me, 2%, and other, 0. And someone said, in my particular case, it's both myself and also the resources and support around me. And again, I quite like this answer because this is someone who's recognised that it's them that needs to deal with the problem ultimately. You know, it's completely our own mindset as to how we choose to progress and how we're going to find a resolution. But sometimes we can't just do it by ourselves. Sometimes you just need a little help in hand, or like you say, some kind of resources or tools as to how you can ward off these bad demons going forward. And I think it's really a really courageous thing to kind of recognise that you need that extra support, because you can't always do it yourself.
No, I think it's ultimately your mind and your maybe your mental prison, as you described it, with being a dark place. And so it is your responsibility, but I mean, I'm going to say this from my point of view, I definitely spread the load because I had a good support network.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of my dear close friends and my family that really listened. And they didn't always understand, and they didn't always have a solution, which was frustrating to me. I was like, just give me an idea. Just give me something to do. I need a plan. And they didn't always have that, but they did listen, and they helped immeasurably. And I think some of them were sick of hearing about it. But what I learned from that is that I actually gained an ear for helping other people. Yeah. There was a positive from that because I appreciated it so much. So I actually had 3 of my friends go through similar experiences, and I was quite helpful to them because I just was like, look, I understand. Do you want me to listen, or do you want an idea? And a lot of the time it's just listen to it and dealing with them like, yeah. And then if you want an idea, because I'm full of ideas, I'll give you them. But most people don't. So I have to keep them back and just hear them out and go, okay, I get that. And so I had a few friends that went through separations. One of them, which was because of the mental health details, was very similar to my circumstance. And we found some solace in that. He had a much quicker recovery than me, though. And it was interesting to see that, but overall it's that support network is important. Resources and tools is like, I don't know, I'm surprised that isn't higher on the percentage, because there is and there isn't. I mean, there's medication, I took that option, there's talking therapy, but on the NHS there isn't really, you know, if you try and get referred for that, because I remember my ex-partner, she did try that during lockdown and it was no use, and it was like a long waiting list.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this in a previous episode as well, that for some people who are really in need of support, it's a really difficult process because of the long waiting lists, or because they're not quite being offered the support they need and things like that. And it was the same process, I guess, with losing my dad. I went in and asked for grief support and I wasn't offered any. I was offered stress relief support, which wasn't what I was going through.
Yeah, you weren't sat at home like...
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think this is a really interesting point. I learned something recently. I don't even know if it's got a name, but I'm going to call it response etiquette, or I guess the lack of. Because you could argue this point, but I think as a nation, we aren't taught compassion, we aren't taught support, we aren't taught how to navigate mental health. And so we've got a whole generation after generation of people who don't really know how to support each other unless that person has also gone through a similar experience, and only then can they offer some kind of help. But it comes to the point where people are like, they don't know what to say, or they don't know what to do, and so they don't do anything at all. And I like what you said a minute ago, where you said one of your friends went through a similar thing to you, and you said, how do you want me to help? Do you want me to give you ideas, or do you want me to listen? And I think that's really important, because that's response etiquette. That's, what do you want? How can I help you? Whereas some people, I think, just go, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you how to fix it. For me, that's really overwhelming. I don't want that at all.
Yeah.
But some people don't want to be taught. They don't want someone to listen because they can't talk about it, or, you know, it
depends what you want, because it could be that someone does want, and like I said, at some points I wanted to just say it. Other times I wanted an idea. I needed a solution. In fact, I remember going to extreme lengths to say, like to my friends, like, look, come up with a plan. How can I turn this around? How can I win this girl back? And he just looked at me like I was a crazy person. I said, come on, use your maths, write an equation, just give me something. And he just was like, no, I can't on this one. You're going to have to learn to move around this one. So it was helpful, but the resources are out there, but they're not all amazing. I found going online a real help. And I know you can get a huge mixed bag there.
Yeah.
But there's so much stuff on YouTube and everything of actual therapists telling you stuff. So you can learn. Now, you do have to be careful because it's a world of people diagnosing themselves
Yeah, totally.
with all sorts of things. And I think it all comes down to mental health and just having outlets and things. But I do think there's the other side of that, is that you've got to be careful that you don't prescribe yourself. Now, I did speak to professionals regarding whether it was PTSD or cluster B personalities, things like that. And they were really helpful, but it's still, there was no diagnosis. So I would encourage anyone listening to take these bits of information and use them.
Yeah.
But don't try and overly identify with any one thing. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. I do agree. I think it can be a burden lifted to sometimes have a diagnosis, especially if you've battled with symptoms or you're not quite sure how to navigate something and it turns out maybe it's because of an underlying thing. I think that can be a real blessing in disguise, but I also think it can be very, very dangerous because you almost live up to the expectation of the stereotype.
Yes. Well, I met someone, I remember it was in the first 6 months of this period for me, and I met a girl who had a diagnosis that I happened to be writing about, and she had a lot of things, and she kind of wore them as a badge. Now, she was young, and I thought it was a generational thing, but she was very proud of these, and it was almost like she got the answer to some of her problems, but I said, oh, well, you can work on these things. And her answer was, nah, I've just got it. So I thought that was maybe the negative side of it, is that some people will take it. And I've noticed it's a complete dichotomy of the younger generations taking all the labels and going, yeah, I'm a bit of this, I'm a bit of that, ADHD, go on. And a lot of them will be. But then there's the older generation I've found, which are in denial of these things. Like, no, don't worry about it, you don't have anything, no, everyone's mad. Yeah. So you see those two dichotomies, and I don't know if we're just in the middle. So I think, there's a balance, because you're right, some of these things are really helpful. Yeah. I found some of these things to learn about immensely helpful. But then I didn't want to go around going, I've got this trauma and that trauma, and step out my way, or don't be rude to me because I've been traumatized. And there's a lot of that going on at the moment. Yeah. So, some kind of measure of balance, maybe just looking for the grey in situations, not the black or white, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I like that. I like that a lot. It's how you navigate things, isn't it? That's what it comes down to. It's suddenly you've overcome something, and hang on a minute, I thought I had this issue a minute ago, but I've just really tried and stretched myself and pushed myself, and actually I can do it. It's just all a psychological thing, and that isn't the case for everything. I completely get that. That's not the case for everything.
But within reason, I think, there's a lot of evidence to show that our brains can... I mean, I remember hearing someone talk about the gym and training and muscle. Yeah. And if you want to get hypertrophy or whatever, there's a lot of evidence to show that if you feel like you're working hard and tearing the muscles and doing good, then they will grow more effectively because your brain is giving permission to the right chemicals to produce that. Whereas if you're down on the idea, then it won't release as much. Again, I don't know to what degree, like you're saying, there are other things that you can't do that with. But I've heard about that. It's very true. Believe.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Going back to our earlier point of the support that is available to the people who need it. Something that I came across as well, I don't know if you know, there's a lady called Zoe Clark Coates. She's like a counsellor, kind of author, does all. So she did like a grief book, which really helped me when I lost my dad. But something that she made a point of, in terms of this kind of response etiquette, sort of how you can help people, was not just offering help, but offering practical support. And I'm fully on board with this, because it's really easy for people to say, call me if you need anything. I'm always here if you need help. Yeah. And to you saying that, it might be a real sincere thing, like, I really want to help this person. But to the person taking that in, it could feel really insincere, because it's so hard to reach out for help. It's so hard to go, well, yeah, actually, I do need you to help me.
Yeah, what? I didn't mean it.
Yeah, it's just, that's
You're
really...
supposed to say, okay.
And so one of her concepts is, by offering practical support, that isn't just the offer of, I'm here from a distance, give me a wave. It's, I'm going to come and I'm going to take you out for a walk, or I'm going to come and do the dishes for you whilst you're feeling bad. And it just lifts a burden, a physical, practical burden from that person. It gets them out of the house, or it gets one thing off their shoulders, that one less thing for them to think about. And that is another type of support that maybe they didn't even know they needed, but in the long run it will help. Again, not always, but a lot of the time it's easier for someone to accept a physical help than it is to say to someone, I need help.
That's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about how significant it is. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these things that we have to do are physical.
Yeah.
Just like the jobs around the house, whatever. And I can relate to that. And it's a huge help to have someone take a job off your hands.
Yeah.
After I moved out of London, I moved in to lodge with my sister. And we both have our mental health struggles. And sometimes they are not helpful. They don't coexist. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Two people dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
But then when one of us is stronger, we have helped each other. And that's been immensely helpful. And I mean, she's amazing at making the brews.
Yeah.
So I can literally be just out for the count with depression.
Yeah.
And a
It's just
lack
that
of
one
mobility.
little,
She'll come and sort me out, and vice versa. Hopefully. I think I do. But yeah, those physical acts, just taking something off your hands.
Yeah.
Someone did it for me recently when I got a huge car bill with my other sister and brother-in-law. I didn't expect it. And you see my old car on the front, it's a classic and I love it, but it cost me a lot this year. They just sent me like the money for that job, which was huge. I didn't expect that, but it really massively helped me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not
One
saying
less thing
everyone
to
has to
think
start
about.
giving me. In fact, that sounds like an endorsement of send your depressed friend money. Keep sending it them. But no, whatever it is, like my friend who goes through his troubles, you know, if it's just taking a Nando's in a background and playing an online game, you know, sometimes that can kick him into gear and vice versa, like, you know. So it's nice to hear of a descriptor for that, because it's helpful.
I really, really like that. And I'm actually going to use that to lead into the next poll question.
Smooth.
And the question was this. During difficult periods, what best sums up your previous experiences regarding offers of support? And the options were: people don't always know how to help, people offer help but don't actually help, people mostly talk about it with me, or people mostly offer practical help or support, like we've just discussed. 41% said people don't know how to help.
Mm-hmm.
The next one at 31% was people offer help but don't actually help. Which is, I guess, like we've just discussed, it's the action of saying, call me if you need anything.
The empty gesture.
Yeah, the empty gesture.
Let's name it. No.
Yeah, no, absolutely, good name. 19% said people mostly talk about it with me, and 9% said people offer practical help or support.
Interesting. Yeah, that's quite extreme stats.
Yeah.
I mean, the one of not knowing how to help, I think there's a good reason for that, and that's because a lot of people don't understand how to, as we talked about.
Yeah.
But also, a lot of these things can trigger people. So a lot of hearing about what you're going through will trigger their own, go into that in psychology, the trauma.
Yeah.
And they will reject the notion of wanting to deal with that. Just like any of us, like if, there might be something on your mind that you don't want to talk about because it's a stress that you have to deal with. I don't know, there's just things I notice with people where you might mention, like, say if it's a guy who's, quite a few generations older than me, might not want to talk about emotions because that's not something they did back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Whatever. So I think that's one reason for it. Yeah, what do you think?
I kind of agree that there is still somewhat of a generational line somewhere. But I think as well, I think we've still got a massive way to go in terms of making mental health less of a taboo. Because I think the moment you almost say those words, it's almost like everyone around you starts treading on eggshells because they don't know how to navigate it and they don't know what to say to you, or they don't know. People just don't know what to do. And like we said before, unless you've been there and you've done it yourself and you've experienced this thing and you can relate to this person and you can offer some kind of support in terms of what you went through, that kind of advice, unless you've experienced it, a lot of us don't have a clue what to say. I mean, before I'd lost my dad, if you'd come to me and said, I've just lost a parent, help me, I wouldn't even know what to say to you, because we're not at any point are we taught that kind of support in schools. We're not taught any kind of psychological support in general at any point.
That's a good point. I could criticise the schooling system all day, but it's big thing is not knowing what to expect, and that's why you can't get annoyed at someone not knowing how to help you. Or it's not productive to get annoyed at them because they might not have the know-how.
Yeah.
And tried to console someone who had lost a child, before birth. And I was like, well, I can't say anything to do with knowing how they feel. Of course not. I don't have the concept. So I just had to offer reassurance.
Yeah.
General reassurance. And that's useful to a degree, but yeah, I was useless to that, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe not useless. But now, as we talked about earlier with the relationship stuff, I can provide an ear. It is a learning experience. It's like studying something.
Yeah.
Especially if you do it to an obsessive degree like I did. I felt like I studied relationships because I did it almost every day, hours at a time, listening to stuff. I take a lot in auditory. So I listen to stuff all day, I remember it all. But I did that for hundreds of days. Hundreds of hours. So you do end up with experience.
Yeah.
And whether that's your way or not, you might do it a different way. You might not do that at all and still learn. But I found that, I've got some experience now. And that's what life is about, isn't it? So you can help people.
Yeah. And I think if we're trying to think of how we can improve this, I guess, education system going forward. I mean, obviously, we're not here to put the world to rights. That's not what we're here for. But I think a good place to start is almost asking someone what their communication technique is. Almost like love language. Mm-hmm. Is your love language words of affection? Is it actions? Is it gifts? I think that also is compatible with mental health. Not in a relationship sense, but when someone is struggling, do they want you to do an action of support? Do they just need you to tell them things are going to be okay? Do they need to talk at you and they just need an ear? I think identifying what someone's method of coping is, that will get you way further than just going, okay, I'm going to try and help you with the way that I know how. Because we all want to do that, but we all have different ways of coping. Mm-hmm. And I very much learned this when I lost my dad, because the only person really in my life at this point was Mason. And me and Mason, as we discovered, have very different ways of coping. And in a very highly intense, pressured circumstance like losing a parent, that is put to the test. You both go into your own coping mechanism and you both try and throw that onto each other. And his is taking himself away to kind of process what's going on and just having space to deal with things, whereas I can't be left on my own, and I don't want to be left on my own. I want someone with me as a distraction. And so it was almost like magnets kind of, repelling each other. But everything that he would try and do, I'd just be like, it's all wrong, you're not doing it right, I don't want any support if you're going to offer the wrong support. Yeah. And it really pushed us apart from each other in a terrible way, until it came to one night we sat and we just talked and talked. And it was a case of, what do you want from me? I'm actually going to listen, actively listen, not just, I'm going to listen to what you have to say and then tell you what my response to that is. Mm-hmm. It was, I'm going to actively listen and then figure out a way that we can maneuver this that's going to benefit us both. And we must have talked for about 7 hours. And it was the best conversation I think I've ever had, because going forward now, we've not even had a hiccup as such. It's just brilliant, because we both know now each other's coping technique, we both know each other's communication technique, and even so much as telling each other to take the bins out, we know how to approach that topic to be in a nice way, Yeah,
that's brilliant that you went through that process.
Yeah,
and
a
that
hard
it worked.
Process, but
it sounds like a crash course that you went through there. 7 hours, just sit down, get it all out.
Yeah.
But no, it's true, and I think one of the most important things is to remember what the other person wants. And I remember a great book for that is Dale Carnegie. It's a How to Win Friends, Influence People. Really old book.
I think I've read this.
It's great for learning those basic lessons, and you have to reread it as well, because they slip away. But the thing about having different styles, or thinking about what the other person might need. Now, I used to be really bad at that. I used to be bad at listening, and that's what another thing I took from dealing with depression was my own flaws, my own faults, because they were laid bare, and I had to look at them. I didn't want to, but I had to, and go, okay, so what was I in this relationship? What was I good at, but what was I bad at? And a lot of things came up, but it was that thing of something I noticed, like as you said you dealt with those things differently. It was like in the lockdown, we dealt with things in very different ways. So she was outwardly depressed and didn't know what to do. And so I didn't realise I was as well. Just with this situation now, not to the degree that I have been, like, I don't think I was chemically imbalanced at that point, but everyone had some kind of low during the lockdown. Well, I say that sweeping statement, maybe not, but I think I experienced it differently, dealt with it differently. I buried my head in hobbies and projects.
Yeah.
And, I was practicing my boogie woogie piano, and I had this Lego buying obsession, and I just did my own thing. But like Mason, I was happy in my own space, but I wasn't supportive because of that.
Yeah.
And she needed me to be there as a support, but then I didn't realise until I was writing about it that I was like, oh, we were both depressed, though I didn't admit it or didn't know.
Yeah.
So she felt like the sick one, let's say.
Yeah.
And that really isolated her,
Yeah.
because no one wants to feel like they're going, well, in terms of, if you don't talk about mental health a lot, going crazy.
Yeah.
So she felt like she was going crazy, and I didn't know what to do. I tried to help. I was like, oh, look, I've researched some therapists. We'll take you soon.
Yeah.
Like, how can it be more isolating? And really the truth is that we both needed it in a different way.
Yeah.
I don't know about you and Mason.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to that. A lot of how we can support other people is literally learning, or even if you don't have the time to learn, if it's maybe someone who isn't necessarily a close friend, it's just perhaps an acquaintance that you're having a deep conversation with. There's no harm in asking, how can I help? Even I think that's maybe too much of an open-ended question sometimes, because I didn't have a clue what help I needed. But I think maybe if someone said, do you want me to listen? Or something I could say yes or no to and not give an open answer. I think open answers I had no idea.
Yeah, because I think if someone just said, well, how do you want me to do this? It almost sounds a little bit
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's overwhelming and you don't really have an answer.
Yeah.
And it's also like, it almost feels impersonal as well, because there's a person saying, how would you like me to apply myself to the situation? It's a bit unnatural maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I don't want to slag off that idea entirely, but it's maybe a bit more intuitive for me now. I know the lesson. And I'm going to say this as maybe another sweeping statement, but women, they often want what you're after in terms of, they want someone to listen instead of giving them a solution. I don't know if that's a cliche. I just feel like that's something that happens in a lot of couples. Women just want to air out their problems, whereas men can be problem fixers. And
yeah, in a way I do agree. Mason's very much the problem solver in our relationship, but he's kind of in a way come to know that, because sometimes problems can't always be fixed, or sometimes you don't necessarily want someone to come in and fix that problem.
Yeah.
Which is kind of one of the things that we ended up talking about during our 7-hour-long discussion, in that he was like, this is a situation that I can't fix. I can't bring back your dad. So me coming along and saying, we're going to do this, this is the solution. I didn't want that. I just need to be able to talk about it. I don't want someone to come and go, I'm going to make you feel better. I'm going to fix this, because it wasn't going to happen. And then there was the pressure to feel different than how I was feeling, and couldn't do it. Just couldn't. It just didn't work for me. But I think, ultimately, just having patience with someone and just understanding it's not a straight away process. It's going to be a long process, and it's just one of those that you've got to navigate it.
Yeah, I think you're right with the patience. And I think also for the other person, it's important to note that they might not be in the position to help you. Mm-hmm. They might be going through their own thing and they can't help you, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, that they're not a supportive person. It just means that they don't have the capacity to help.
Yeah.
There's times when I wanted to help people and I've gone, there's no way I can give that energy because I barely got it for myself. Yeah. But then there's other times you have an abundance of it. So I think it's okay for someone to say, you know what, I'm not the right person today. I mean, that is hard. That's a hard thing to say. But
it's really important. So someone actually sent us a comment on that topic saying, don't try to be everybody's hero all the time. Help, but set boundaries so that you don't neglect your own well-being. I really like that.
The boundaries thing is important, because otherwise you get into the thing of resentment where you're giving away too much. Yeah. And I know people that have a giving nature, but they also don't have the boundaries to say, this is taking too much from me. Yeah. And they give until they become resentful. I'm not sorry for trying to take care of myself.
That's a big step.
It was, instead of people pleasing, which is another whole kettle of fish. Is that next episode? Come back for that.
That could be about 10 episodes. That could. I'm actually going to move on to another question, and this is a little bit more of a happier one. I guess a little advice corner. Mm-hmm. What little things do you do in order to recognise the small bits of progress you're making? And we had lots of people say very similar things in different words. Someone said, constant reassurance to myself that I'll make it out of the hole that I'm in and try to keep my focus. like that.
Yeah, reassurance, yeah.
Yeah. Someone else said, take it day by day and spend some time at the end of each day to make sure I'm aware it's not always a fast process.
Okay, so like affirmations.
Yeah, daily affirmations. Someone said, being patient with myself is helpful and all the self-care and not expecting to get better overnight. Again, a lot of people saying the same kind of things and reiterating that it isn't a fast process. It's not linear. It's not, there is an end goal that I need to reach. So sometimes that end goal can be there and you don't even realise that you've got there, you know? And so you kind of stop and look around and go, well, hang on a minute. I wasn't where I was, 10 weeks ago. I'm actually much happier.
Yeah, and that's a milestone, and remember that. And
Yeah.
and you don't have to throw a party.
Yeah.
But you could make sure that there's a mental
Some
recognition
reflection.
of it.
Yeah, totally. Someone said monthly reflections, asking my partner for observations on how I'm coping, which I think is interesting because sometimes you can't see it for yourself. Sometimes you might need someone to just go, oh, you're doing really well at the moment. And that's like a pat on the back.
Yeah, I guess so. That one would strike me as that's you'd either like it or you're not like it, because I know what you're saying. It's nice to hear that you're doing well, but then that could also be a reminder of, I guess it's the reality of it, really. I think it's me recognising I'm doing well at the moment. I had to realise that there were times when I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And that made me feel kind of, I wouldn't say sorry for myself, but I was like, that's quite tragic that I was in that boat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why that happened at that time, because I was down. And it's a bit of a realisation, but you're probably right in that. Someone telling you, you know what, this is happening, you're doing well. It's outside confirmation.
Yeah. Someone else said keeping a diary, and similarly someone said journaling has been a huge help.
Yeah, well that's, as I say, like the writing I did, even though I hadn't published it, I wish to publish it. The writing, just the process, did a world of good.
Yeah.
And I even remember writing that in it. I go, while I was doing this, it was very therapeutic. It gave me a mission, and it helps to get your thoughts down in writing. I think that's, proven how much that helps you to
Completely.
to say, or even to say things out loud, because your brain is a crazy mix of things and thoughts, and that's why people meditate, because these things run around your mind, and it can be a noisy place at times.
It's taking something out and putting it in a new place.
It's sort it out, get it into something. You don't have to, doesn't have to be anything profound. It can just be the journal. I mean, you can burn it. That's what a lot of people say, write a letter or do this or do that and then burn it. I'm not a fan of that, because I was like, I want to turn this into, I want to make some money off it at some point. Turn it to some profits.
That's the problem with creative, isn't it?
It's like, how can I
songwriting, how can I make this a tangible product that I
makes it sound a bit shallow, that, but
no, I get it. As a creative person, I mean, in anything that you pour out of your soul just naturally becomes art when you're creative, and when it's your job, you instantly go, oh, I can make money off of this pain.
That's it. I was like, I'm not just going to do a journal. Like, you sell this. It's going to be my vehicle to be famous.
What else have we got? Someone has said, similarly to what we just mentioned, just looking back at how bad I was and comparing to the present. Someone said, I've tried to remember at least 3 things a day that I'm grateful for, along with meditation when I remember, and try to treat my own progress and achievements as if they were someone else's that I care about.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the first few things I think are important, the gratitude and the recognition.
Gratitude journaling for me has been a massive thing.
Yeah, I think that one helps me as well. I think that's, I don't do it enough. Again, it's writing down the positive things.
Yeah.
And what was the last one again? That was
treating my own progress and achievements as if it's someone else's.
I think for anyone going through a depressed state or an anxious state, or any of the spectrum that this covers, may not care about themselves very much at that time. I know I've felt like that. I was never as awful as some people feel, but I found myself not caring about situations. Like, I got into a couple of scraps in London. I was trying to help someone, but I didn't really care if I got hurt.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like not caring about what happened to me. So to treat it as if it's someone else that you care about, you suddenly go, that's a person, and I would not treat a person like that. And I'm the person that inhabits this body. So treat it with care.
Yeah.
And that's self-love.
Yeah. And finally, I've had so many comments, but I'm going to read one more. Someone said, something that's been a big help for me has been reflexology and EFT tapping. Now, this is something I'm unfamiliar with, in terms of like what I've taken on board, but very, very interesting. And I love when people introduce new techniques, or just when people find something that works for them. It's a very euphoric feeling when, like, gratitude journaling for me, although it was a slow process to begin with, and I was just like, when you first start doing something, you're like, I can't even think of what I'm grateful for because everything is crap. And you just write the naffest things. And then suddenly, kind of 2 weeks down the line, you realise you're actually going about your day looking for the positives. And just like, I guess, with this person, they now have a coping mechanism where they have something that they can resort to that's going to bring them comfort in a time of need.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's whatever helps you is important. So if that is by becoming spiritual, or if it is by becoming religious, or maybe it's becoming an obsessive gym nut, whatever it is, if it helps you, then it's good. And reflexology, I know my mum, she's always been a fan of that. I think I went as a kid, I didn't like it, but this is different, you see. There's things to be found in that, in acupuncture, all those things, and cold water therapy is something I'm trying to some degree. I'm not quite Wim Hof, but try the cold showers and the odd dip in the ice bath, but it's whatever works for you. The tapping, I think my other sister does that, and now that's not something I would do. I tap things enough playing the piano, so I'm like, I don't know about that. I think it's about grounding yourself, isn't it? And I don't get into chakras and stuff, but someone else might, and they might grow from that. And then I know people are way more rigid in their beliefs. So whatever works. If it's just meeting up with your friends at the pub, if it's talking rubbish with your friends. I have two friends who we reconvened during lockdown, and it was great because I hadn't seen them for years, and we just started gaming, and so we did that every other day, and it was one way we got through the lockdown because we were just, it was a social thing. We had each other on WhatsApp, and it was so nice to talk to these guys because they were from my primary school. I could let down my hair a little bit and just kind of say whatever we wanted without worrying about being too adult or even politically correct. And it was just in this little safe space where we could just air out these things, and that was really healthy for us. Now we know we're sometimes talking rubbish and we squabble and we argue about this game, and it's quite childish, but there's a little bit of that that's quite good to stretch, that we all have that inside of us, and I think that's, you can repress it in today's society. We kept that up since lockdown. It wasn't just a lockdown thing, but it's healthy, I've realised. I'm not going to say like wild hogs, like male bonding, but there's a little bit of that.
It's the connection. And if you can find pure joy in whatever form it comes in, then completely cling to that.
Yeah, it's like, for instance, now like we even meet up like in person to play. So we'll cook breakfast, we'll go for a long walk, we'll go for a hike, and then we'll play. We'll shout abuse at each other. And just got a step away from it going, without that, things can get serious. Even in the community we're in, performance, it can all be work. It's a fun job. But this allows for a little bit of silliness. And I need to be silly throughout the day.
That's been one of your things, I guess, that filled that little hole, because that maybe wasn't something that was in your life before, because your life before was envisioning this future with your partner, and now you've got a whole new life that you've mapped out for yourself, filled it with all of these new things that have brought you a different kind of happiness, and that's what it's all about.
I mean, that makes it sound like I've traded a potential wife and mother of children for a game, and that's not what's happened. I want to just state for the record, but it's getting in touch with what you like, and as we said, this come full circle in a way, to like what you said, it's finding out who you are, growing around it. Who are you as Sam in this perspective now that your dad was in that part of your life? And this is a different part. And maybe he's with you in some way. It depends on what you believe. But it's the same here in that I move forward. I don't regret. And it's exciting now. The sky seems brighter. Not in the north.
It's
cloudy up
never
here.
in the north.
But everything seems a bit lighter when you have a little bit more openness. And optimism. So yes, it's a good place to get to.
Totally. I'm gonna end things on a quote.
Go for it.
Because I came across this the other day and I feel like it's very apt for my situation and also for your situation. And it's by Zoe Clark Coates, which is the lady that I mentioned earlier. And she said, "Your grief doesn't connect you to that person or thing, your love does." And I love this because if you can continue to embrace that love going forward, you don't need to think about the thing you've left behind, because it's the love for that thing that you've carried and is what is going to see you through into the future. And you can put that into all of these other things because you are capable of that love,
I
Isn't
like
that a beautiful
I think it's
sentiment?
a nice way of saying, many different cases, it's a nice way of saying don't regret things. But it's also try not to hold on to resentment as well. or maybe in your case, try not to hold on to something that isn't going to be anymore, and in my case.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people may turn to that as a solution to go, oh, well, it was that, and I'm different now, and you know, I mean, I don't want to ruin that lovely quote, but there's one thing that I just notice a trend of these days, which is my ex was a narcissist. That phrase is just so common now, and I think what it means is it doesn't work with that, because it says that I've chosen to blame and I've not looked at myself sometimes, and that's what it can mean. Whereas letting go and having that, which is loving and having compassion, because that's what we're all here for. We're here for a limited time. Life's in session and we can't be holding on to things. So I'm trying to bring it back to that quote, which is just remember the good times and learn from them.
Grow around them. Become the bigger tree.
I think you might struggle with that one. So.
I've reached my peak now. Thank you for coming,
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to your lovely audience.
Where can we find you? Where can we find your music?
You can follow me on Arthur West Music. That's Instagram. That's where I mainly operate at the moment. And you can come see me perform in Oxford, London, occasionally Manchester, but just let me know where you are and I'll see if I'm playing in your area.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam.
See you soon.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Calm Within the Storm podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found today's discussion valuable. Please tune in for the next one. We look forward to seeing you there.